ladies and gentlemen. As a soldier, I'd like to give it a slightly militaristic perspective because Samuel Huntington started the clash of civilizations. So, taking up on that genre, I would like to emphatically state that no other country in the world has the idea of itself so comprehensively attacked and virtually destroyed as the Indian civilization was. The fact of the matter is, the last almost about 300 years of colonization, one of the landmarks that happens is the first war of independence, 1857, when the people of India, fed up with that assault on their culture, with their assault on their dignity, revolted against the British East India Company. And after that rebellion was very cruelly suppressed, outside every village there were, bodies hung by their necks. That is the summary justice that the British had done. And at the end of it, they decided that they would ensure that India and Indians would never come together to fight or rise against the British Empire. And to that extent, they began a very thorough and systematic study of our society. They are good anthropologists. They identified every single fault line that they could in the Indian body politic. And one of the first that they identified was caste. Every collectorate, every commissionerate that you had to go and register your gotra, your caste, your jati and everything. All that possibly we were forgetting as you industrialize, as you urbanize. Caste and these categories start falling by the wayside. They belong to largely an agricultural era. They revived caste with a vengeance. In 1872, Sir John Risley held the first caste-based census. And John Risley famously wrote, as long as there is caste, there will be no India. As long as there is caste, there will be no India. They have used it to thoroughly divide our society. And then they went on, of course, next to religion, to creed, and they gave a separate electorate to the Muslims. We have had, terrorist problems in Jammu and Kashmir. They gave separate electorate to the Sikhs. We had problem in Punjab. They gave separate electorate to the Christians. We've had problem in the Northeast. And then they gave, of course, separate electorate to the scheduled caste and tribes. They identified every single fault line and they tried their level best to see that the idea of India as such is destroyed. And Churchill famously said, India as the basis of a nation state, the equator, how can the equator be the basis of a nation state? It has got as much, credibility as the idea of the equator as the basis of a nation state. He scoffed at us. Well, today we are a nation state. And we have always been. If somebody thinks that nationhood is the gift of the British, please read the Atharva Veda. It talks of the Rashtra. The Atharva Veda talks of the Rashtra. So what are you talking about, this gift of democracy, this gift of nationhood from the British? They did everything they could to destroy your identity, your self-identity. And number two, apart from destroying your identity, give you a congenital feeling of inferiority. The pity is, for 70 years after the British have left, we are still not overthrown the shackles of our psychological slavery. You are still psychological slaves of the British. You still look towards the West for endorsement. You still look towards the West for validation. And a thing becomes right only if the West says it is so. You have that congenital sense of inferiority which was deeply, deeply instilled into you. And it is this that we have to fight. And it is this that I would like to compliment Rajiv Malhotra for the excellent, this is a project to regain our national self-respect. It is a project to regain our destroyed sense of self-respect. Everything desi is inferior. Everything vilayati, is superior. That is the mindset that is deeply, deeply ingrained into you. If I can talk to you in English, well, I am a superior country gentleman. But if I talk in Hindi or in Tamil or some other of our local languages, isko pata nahi hai. So that is the problem. We must understand the assault that was made upon our cultural integrity, upon our idea of the self. It is this lost sense of the self that we have to recover. As an ancient civilization, carbon dated to 7,000 years, empirically, carbon dated to 7,000 years. Our problem has been this destruction of our very idea of the self. I've been doing some research on this particular topic, and when I was in the army, my subject was information warfare. It is now a war that you have to fight, the battle of perceptions, battles to shape the ideas of who we are, what is our identity, हमारा वजूद क्या है, हम कौन हैं. If that you can assault, I mean, that is the first thing that you have demolished. And in this, battle of the self, we've all heard of the famous, Dr. Wendy Doniger. What exactly, how you pronounce that ridiculous name? But, in 1958, the Americans passed the National Defense Education Act. As a part of this act, there were a number of institutions set up to carry out intelligence activity, perception management activities. One of these established in India was the American Institution of Indian Studies, right? And may I remind you that as far back as the Second World War, the University of Pennsylvania had helped to establish this, institutions of scholarship to study India, to serve the military during the Second World War. Most of the American programs to studying India grew out of the intelligence and military departments, which sought, please listen to this carefully, which sought to shape opinions in other countries through the media and the academia. They sought to influence opinions in other countries through the media and through the academia. Media we know very well of, and we know the whole of British India was conquered by Indian foot soldiers of the empire who fought for the British. There were only about 20 to 40,000 British soldiers, and the number of Indian soldiers was 1 to 2 lakhs at any given point of time. It is the Indian soldiers who conquered India for the British, their foot soldiers. And now we have the academic and the media foot soldiers of the empire shaping our opinions, telling us how low down, what a low form of life you are compared to the West, and giving you that congenital sense of inferiority. Everything seems to be wrong with us. Wendy Doniger's father was Lister Doniger. He was a CIA operative. This lady herself was a part of the CIA, and when she was studying, she was a professor at the University of Chicago, her guide in the University of Daniel Ingalls. He was a known intelligence operative. When she went to Oxford, she worked under R.C. Zehner, another known intelligence operative. All right? And in 1963-64, Wendy Doniger was sent to India as part of this American Institution of Indian Studies, and we know the kind of work she has done. She is today an intelligence operative, is regarded as the last word and authority on India. I find it very difficult to get a book published by Penguins, but Penguins will bend over backwards to produce Hinduism by Wendy Doniger, and she started off quite well. If you read her initial books on the Vedas, one thought they were decent, and then slowly the agenda starts coming out. Attract an audience, win an audience, influence an audience, tell you about what you are. I think it's about time to rescue Indology from the clutches of these Western spin masters, to give a spin to the news, spin doctoring the news. spin doctoring the content to the media. This is an ongoing war. There are full-time officers, staffs sitting and working on these particular, strategies, information warfare strategies, how to strike at the root of your idea of the self, how to make you feel low down, how do you make you think, oh, the Americans are up there and we are down here. We had Oxford and Cambridge as our meccas. Now we want to go to Harvard. We want to go to, any other university, Massachusetts or Caltech. That is the new meccas that are now emerging. So it is this mindset of inferiority that we have to assault. And one of the first things I have requested, Rajiv,